Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to the 2022 Eurogas Tech Conference, delivering on 2050. Thank you very much for joining us, and thank you for making us part of your afternoon. It is really appreciated. My name is Sasha Twining. I am your independent moderator, and it is my job to guide you through the next couple of hours and ensure that you get all the information that you need. Because, as we all know, this is a crucial time for the industry. And what Eurogas has done is bring together experts for the tech panels this afternoon, experts in both electrolyzers and also in carbon capture and storage, to talk about the challenges and indeed the opportunities ahead in meeting the targets that have been set for the wider industry. And as I say, this is a crucial time. So I am hoping very much that you will get involved and supply questions, thoughts, and opinions as we go through this afternoon, so that we can all share information and discuss the wider challenges for the industry. So we have for you coming up two panels where we talk in very technical terms about what is going on, talk about innovations and the possibilities for the future. And we have our keynote speakers as well. We will hear from the Commission very shortly. But first, let us hear a few words on the shape of the industry and indeed the wider industry, how it all fits together. Let's hear first of all from the President of Eurogas, Didier Hollon.
Well, good afternoon to all. Obviously, I cannot start this Gas Tech conference without paying due attention to the international situation we are in, because it's unprecedented and it has a major impact on all the gas industry. First, I would start by expressing our solidarity with our Ukrainian colleagues, which are facing an invasion and war on their territory. And obviously, as all Western countries, we are expressing our solidarity with them. Second, we have seen things happening on the gas market in Europe that we would never have thought possible in the precedent years. We have seen our market for gas in Europe being manipulated by the Russian suppliers to an extent that led the market to reach levels of prices which are not only unprecedented, but unsustainable. And in these circumstances, we need to express our solidarity also with our customers. Because obviously the gas consumers are facing incredibly high prices, which will put obviously both industrial customers on one side and professional and domestic customer in very difficult circumstances, both of these categories having great difficulties to face the amount of their gas bills. Obviously, the gas industry in itself and the policymakers have not stayed without reaction in this context. And we must welcome the unprecedented efforts by member states and the Commission to try to face this situation, like building a new storage obligation which has made possible to fill the European storages before the winter. We globally welcome the initiative taken by the Commission under the name of Repower EU as a way to set up new targets for renewable gas and renewable hydrogen. And we fully support the targets of the 35 BCM of biomethane and 10 million tons of hydrogen that were developed by the Commission in this Repower EU document. We are also very keen globally to see the hydrogen economy developing and to build electrolyzer industry in Europe. We see it as a very important step of Europe developing its industrial base and developing its strategic autonomy as a large industrial place amongst the developed countries in the world. We believe that developing the electrolyzer building capacity up to 17.5 gigawatts per year is an ambitious but doable target, and we support it. Nevertheless, we need to make sure that in order to develop this nascent industry, the hydrogen industry, we need to make sure that we create the appropriate conditions to allow this industry to develop quickly without too much red tape, without too much conditions that our competitors in other parts of the world will not be facing. And that's a very important step. That's a very important part of the commitment that Europe should take towards its industrial companies, that we will allow them to develop at the same speed as their competitors, be it in Asia or in the Americas. We need to make sure that we don't create conditions which would, for instance, make more difficult to use green power to make green hydrogen than to use green power to do something which is not as useful as hydrogen, like mining bitcoins. We need to make sure that green hydrogen, because it's a very relevant solution for the decarbonization of the European industry, is promoted and not hindered by conditions like additionality that other countries, other regions are not facing. So we need to make sure that the standards which are applied to this nascent industry during the first year are allowing a quick development so that we can compete with other parts of the world, and that we are not prevented to develop our industry by, once again, red tape or technical condition, or too much delay in giving subsidies to this industry. We have seen the Inflation Reduction Act in the US, making it simple, easy, very clear for the US industry to know how much subsidies they will get to develop decarbonized hydrogen. And if we put our own industry at a disadvantage, it will be very difficult to catch up afterwards. So we need to be very pragmatic. We also need, with pragmatism, to consider that carbon capture and storage could be part of the solution. Obviously, we all like green hydrogen and we think it's part of the solution. But in some cases, the fact that we are able to capture the carbon, be it in solid form like turquoise hydrogen, or be it in gaseous form like with blue hydrogen, is also a solution that, at least temporarily, during the years where we develop the hydrogen economy, should be used and can help the European industry to develop its power, its presence in hydrogen in a quicker and more efficient way. So we need to be very clear and pragmatic about carbon capture and storage. And that's something that Eurogas has been developing for years. We believe that it has a role to play in the development of the hydrogen economy, even if we strongly believe that in the future, green hydrogen will be the main way to develop the hydrogen economy. That's why we fully support the target that we have proposed to have at least 20% of the gas used in the EU to be fully decarbonized by 2030. And we think that this objective should be reflected in the European legislation. Our panel today will focus on the topic of developing the electrolyzer industry on one side and developing the carbon capture and storage on the other side. We strongly believe these two elements are part of the development of the future gas economy and hydrogen economy in the EU. And I'm looking forward to hearing from our experts and our different panels more about this technology and how they can develop. I thank you for your attention.
Didier Hollande, thank you very much for your message, talking there about targets he called ambitious but doable, and also stressing the need on Eurogas's point of view that there should be a global level playing field. So let us now hear from the Commission to set out its views and to talk about views on the industry and indeed the wider energy sector. Please welcome, joining us from the Commission, very pleased to say we have the Deputy Director, Clean Planet at the Clean Energy Transition DG Research, Ellen Cry. Ellen.
Thank you very much. And first of all, thank you for the invitation. As you said, I'm coming from DG Research and Innovation, and later on the afternoon, you will have the director from the Directorate General on the Energy. So I will mostly speak on the priorities and on the relevant priorities for research and innovation, which is a little bit longer term than in the immediate solution to the crisis. However, I have to give a little bit of indications on the frame where we are working. The first thing is energy is critical. We say it, but the recent events have shown that energy is the blood of the economy. Whatever you want to do, you need energy. And it's tackling the industries as well as the people and any activity. So facing the current crisis and anticipating next crisis, because it seems that we go from one to another for the moment, and it's not sure it will stop because one next challenge is coming. There's the role of research and innovation to put that in front of the policymakers. The next one will be the abuse of resources of the planet. Because if we want to go to a clean energy transition, we will need a lot of changes in a magnitude which will tap enormously into the resources of the planet. There are already critics on the use of water for hydrogen, for instance. There are critics on the use of raw materials for batteries. So this is the coming challenge. Having given this frame, and also forgetting, to add the further challenge, which is to match the needs of the people, because austerity is something you can live with during a certain amount of months or years, but not all your life. That will not go through. We need to find positive solutions and not only negative ones. So this was dictating the approach in Repower, and Repower is mainly proposing short-term changes, but also providing with a vision for the future big changes we have to follow. And here comes research. We have been doing quite a lot of research on hydrogen. We were almost the first one to ring the bell and say, hey guys, we need to do something quickly. And thanks to the work of the joint undertaking, for instance, and the cooperation with industry, we are leader in most of the technologies for hydrogen. But a stable situation is never stable. So we needed to support that. We need to invest. And one of the elements of Repower EU is to highlight the need for the EU to focus on the critical steps of the value chain. And these are, first, production of renewable energy, because it is a resource we have in the EU, and we will need an enormous amount of such, whether to do electricity or whether to do clean hydrogen. The second critical step, and this is beginning to be really worrying, is storage. I know that my colleagues with us from the energy are preparing an approach on storage. Because even if we succeed in producing the renewable hydrogen we need, according to Repower EU, we cannot store it for the moment. So it shows that the critical step of the value chain is always the weakest one. And for the moment, it seems to be more and more storage and distribution. So that leads to the content of this event, where you were speaking about, where you were targeting hydrogen, but also renewable gases. So hydrogen is one solution. Renewable gases are another one. Biomethane will offer complementary solutions. We have the strictest rules in the EU about use of bioenergy, about production of bioenergy and use of biomass. But just maybe to answer some remarks, the EU principle is that we should have, in a way, a guarantee of origin, not to pervert the competition. It's not to adjust to the weakest part of the world. It is to show that our way is the one to follow. So that makes a big difference in the approach. But biomethane, we will need a lot of biomethane, and we will need also to work enormously on the availability of infrastructure, again, to store and distribute, whether hydrogen, when all renewable gas. And the research and innovation has made a lot of progresses and has produced a lot of solutions for that, even for mixing. Sorry, sometimes my English is escaping me. Putting different gases in the same pipeline. Sorry for that. Then I understood also you were speaking about carbon capture, use and storage, but this is linked to what I said, because carbon capture, use and storage plays a crucial role in the Green Deal for the transition of energy-intensive industries and the power sector. It will be especially important for the industries where there is no other alternative yet, like the cement industry. And if carbon capture utilization or storage is combined with sustainable biomass, it would even create negative emissions, which is very interesting. So pending that we respect the principles of the use of biomass in the EU, there is also a big potential in that, which is evidenced in Repower EU. I work in research and innovation, so we have decided that we will work only on production of renewable hydrogen. But this is for the future technologies. We are perfectly aware that there is a need to do the transition, and the transition could be done with clean hydrogen. So it's not to say no to that. It's just to say in the future, we should go for renewable hydrogen exclusively. But in the current situation, we need other types of hydrogen because they have a role in leading industry for climate neutrality. For instance, big energy intensive industries, steelmaking, chemicals, or refining, where we will need large quantities of hydrogen, which we don't have for the moment. And carbon capture and storage enable low carbon hydrogen at scale. But again, we work on carbon capture and storage. We work on supplying renewable hydrogen. Now, whether you carry renewable or non-renewable hydrogen in your pipes, it's the same hydrogen, it's the same molecule. So we work without limit on storage, distribution, and end use. So just to make clear what we mean by renewable hydrogen and where it applies, because we have to respect the taxonomy, by the way. To finish, because I don't want to be too long, and I'm sure the panel will be very, very interesting. I would like to insist that one of the core issue or one of the core specificity of the EU is a cooperation between the various levels, EU, national, regional, local, and the cooperation between the public and the private, represented for hydrogen by the joint undertaking on hydrogen, for instance. So this is providing us with a strong value. This is providing us with a big help, and we are currently in a process of revamping the SET plan, the Strategic Energy Technology Plan, to adjust it to the objectives and the processes detailed in the Green Deal and in Repower EU, so that the cooperation at all levels, which again is very big value added of the EU, will support more intensively these objectives of the climate mitigation, of a fair energy and energy for all, and of protecting the resources of the planet. Thank you very much.
Hélène, thank you very much for joining us. That's a lot that you have covered there in the last few minutes, ending, of course, with the importance of looking after the planet. And you've talked about the needs of the most vulnerable in society. I particularly liked your comment. You can live with austerity for a bit, but you can't live with austerity forever. So these things need to be tackled. Hélène, thank you very much for joining us. There's certainly a lot of food for thought there. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to move on to our first panel of the day. I think Hélène has set it up very nicely for us, the way that she was talking about hydrogen and the critical steps in the value chain, also talking about storage. But in our first panel, we're going to concentrate on electrolyzers. And we have people from different parts of the industry to talk about where they are and what they are doing. Before I introduce the panel, can I stress this is a very open panel and it is up to you to ask questions. I will take as many questions as possible from yourselves and put them as soon as I can to our panelists. So just type them into the box on the screen where you are watching now. I will be able to see your questions and I'll put as many to them as possible. Don't wait to the end. Do them as soon as you think of your questions. So let me introduce the panel to you now. So we have Anna Kellas, who is the Managing Director for Hydrogen EDP Renewable. Anna, very good to have you there. Next to Anna, along the screen there, is Vitaya Cohen, who's the co-founder and communications at Inapta. Vitaya is also the winner of the Earthshot Prize. We will be talking more about that later, I am sure. Christian Fudul, the CTO and Managing Director of H2 Projects at the Smart Energy Group. Christian, good to see you again. And Graham Cooley, CEO of ITM Power. Graham, good to have you there as well. Now, Eurogas has invited each panelist to give a brief 5-minute overview of how they see this particular part of the industry. So concentrating on electrolyzers and what their company is doing. So in no particular order, but Anna, we will start with you. If you would like to tell us where you are in this industry at the moment.
Very well. First of all, thank you very much for the invitation to be here and sharing some thoughts with you about the hydrogen topic. So my name is Anna and I'm heading the hydrogen business unit at EDP Renewables. So I'm pretty sure that you're familiar with EDP, but just to make sure that everybody is aware. So EDP, we were born as the utility company in Portugal many decades ago. Since then, we've grown our business to expand it, and we are now very focused on developing renewables. Today, we have 25 gigawatts of installed capacity worldwide, and 80% of that is renewables. But by 2025, we have the goal to be totally coal-free, and we still have 6 coal power plants in our portfolio. And by 2030, all green. So by 2030, we will add new 50 gigawatt of renewables. So that's a growth of 5 gigawatt a year on average. And Europe and North America are, of course, our core markets. So with this DNAs, coming from a renewable developer background, mastering exactly, an important part of the value chain that actually represents 2/3 or sometimes even more of the cost to produce renewable hydrogen. This is a critical part of the value chain, and knowing how to do this gives us, confidence that we can add value to the hydrogen economy by promoting the development of renewable hydrogen projects. So we are developing, investing, and building renewable hydrogen projects. We have today 2 projects under construction, 2 small pilot projects under construction, one in Portugal, another one in Brazil. And we are developing different types of projects. One that I would say is a flagship type of projects that we are developing is precisely around the transition of our coal sites. So we are in all of our coal sites, we are, of course, thinking of a second life after coal for these sites, and hydrogen hubs, this concept fits very well. And actually we have 3 hydrogen projects of 100 megawatt each in Europe. The 3 have secured support from the European Commission to actually are under the IPCEI wave, and the other one has secured the Green Deal funding call. And I'll tell you a little bit more about these projects, but on these sites, we are developing the initial phase of 100 megawatt that then can scale up if the conditions are there and if the market is there. In other parts of the world, namely in North America, where we don't have any coal assets or any brownfield projects, there we are developing different projects around existing off-takers and taking advantage of our renewable portfolio and the renewable pipeline to develop there. So very happy to be here, and I'm sure we'll have more time later to enter into more details.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Anna. We will absolutely find out more about the 2 plants that you have under construction and how they are going, and maybe some challenges along the way. From Anna, let us move over to Vaitea, co-founder and communications at Enapter. Vaitea, would you like to tell us a little bit where you fit into the industry? Vaitea, there we go. Yeah.
Good. Fantastic. Yeah, great to be here. Thank you very much for the invitation. So yeah, as mentioned, I'm one of the co-founders of Enapter. Enapter is turning 5 years old actually this year. So started it in 2017. And we are the pioneer and commercial leaders in AEM electrolysis. So we're working towards making green hydrogen affordable and accessible for everyone. So if it's not clear, we build electrolyzers and we are a technology provider. So our electrolyzers today are used across all different sectors and also now in 52 countries and still counting. And we are a publicly listed company since summer 2020 on the regulated Frankfurt Stock Exchange. Currently, we are producing our electrolyzers in Italy, in Pisa, and we're scaling up our production in the northwest of Germany, in NRW. We believe that the anion exchange membrane is the next generation electrolyzer technology because it is combining the advantages of the PEM and alkaline technologies. So we are achieving high efficiency at a low cost. Essentially, we are shaving costs by avoiding the use of titanium. And we're also using standard power supply units. So it's not only the technology that is unique to Enapter, but also the way that we are scaling and the way we are approaching scaling green hydrogen. So we are building electrolyzers as standardized and modular and compact units that can be mass produced and that can ultimately make green hydrogen a commodity. So if you're familiar with the mainframes and the PCs, you might remember that the mainframes were those first supercomputers designed for businesses mainly, very sophisticated and took up a lot of space until the PC came and disrupted the IT industry. And so while others in the industry are building electrolyzers similar to the mainframe, we're building electrolyzers kind of like the PC, so in a compact and mass producible way. So we're aiming to build a plug-and-play electrolyzer that can easily be integrated in a fraction of time traditionally than what's usually needed to deploy green hydrogen. So with modular units, we're enabling all sorts of customers, whether they're energy utilities, system integrators, EPCs, to take our systems and also scale up their own applications. So today, those examples include grid stabilization, refueling, supplying industrial gas as well. And I'm sure we have a chance to dive into those. But just a few last words on our next steps. It's, of course, scaling up. And so our Enapter campus, our mass production site, its construction is on track. We just received the keys to the R&D building and we're finishing the construction of our production hall. And we will start producing our electrolyzers early in 2023. And what's worth noting is that this Enapter campus is fully powered by renewables, as we are demonstrating that there is no environmental trade-off to scaling up. Thank you.
Vaitea, thank you very much. And just before we move on to Christian, just to clarify, your target audience? Because you talk about mainframes and PCs, which to me would then suggest you're talking about getting into the domestic market because of the size. I mean, you're shaking your head. It's not something that, because PCs are the things that we now think about change the domestic market with computers, but that's not what you're doing. It's purely business.
I really appreciate you asked this question, because actually there is the next step to that analogy, right? The data centers, and the data centers is that B2B area. And so that's exactly how we're thinking about it. Data centers are made by blade servers, which is PC technology. And this is exactly how we are also going into the megawatt scale. So definitely, to clarify, B2B all the way.
Okay, lovely. Thank you very much. Brilliant. Maite, thank you. And remember, any questions for any of our panelists or areas that you would like to hear them talk about, just fill in the text box, the question box on your screen. We'll get through as many as possible. Christian from the Smart Energy Group, tell us where you stand in the market and where you are at the moment.
Thank you, Sasha. Very, very pleased to be here in this very great expert panel, also on the technology side. We are the ones, as a Smart Energy, we are a private investment firm, and we are at the same time developing projects. So we are the guys looking for technology, which we have been explained here, and which needs to fit the moment in the market and the requirements in the market at the given time. So for us, we see a very big challenge in the availability of renewable energy resources. We are fully focused on renewable hydrogen. And by that, because this is our DNA of the company, we've been doing large PV utility scale projects always in the past. And with this background, we see that for the current discussion we are in Europe, that there is a big challenge on what you see by the discussion of additionality, having additional really renewables at any time available. We know that there is controversial discussions and it has been a bit postponed, but in the end, regardless of the rules and regulations, your system needs to be able to cope with the supply of electricity. So what we have done is that we have phased our projects in various stages. The first one is to go with a size which we can control on a more local, decentralized basis, building an ecosystem which is not depending yet fully on a transport solution, on a logistic solutions on a longer distance, which is also not dependent too much on a electricity solution, which we cannot control. The second phase is when we assume this market, the hydrogen market, is developing. There is transport logistic routes. We know pipeline is the ideal way, but there is the other transport options. Then we scale up. We have a second phase, larger electrolyzer. So already here the request to the electrolyzer manufacturers to have a scalable, a kind of a box type approach, which we need to build on step by step. We cannot right away go in the first step at the maturity of the market to the very big installation. And we're talking in our projects the 20, 40, 60 and 100 megawatts already. But obviously then going to the larger scale, you talked about the 10 million tons to be produced within Europe. If we look on a global scale, right now 100 million tons are used on hydrogen already, but the scale is beyond 200 by 2030. So there's a massive need for large-scale projects then. And this is how we cope. We interact with the technology providers. Obviously, today is the focus on the electrolyzer side. We have carefully looked at the beginning when we set up the projects, the first project 3 years ago. The alkaline technology was the one ready enough to go for discussions on bankability, etc. But we see the new technologies coming also as a chance to mitigate better this being ready for intermittency. And just to throw out a few projects which we can also discuss further, we made a press release yesterday on a project, on our first hydrogen projects in Italy, which is directed to the petrochemical industry. And the steps there is 20 megawatts, 100 megawatts, 200 megawatts by stages. We have a longer announced project in the ceramic industry in Valencia or close to Valencia in Spain, and another project in Portugal, which has been announced on the hydrogenated vegetable oil. So a bit of different animal. And for all these, we need kind of specific solutions. I would say right now, every project is very specific, but we are looking for standardization for the ability to have a blueprint for further projects to come.
Graham, thank you very much. Christian, thank you very much. And a lot of enthusiasm there, and it's good to hear about the projects that you are now working on. And yes, we will hear a lot more about those. So from Christian, our final panelist, just to give us an idea of where you sit in the industry and what you're looking ahead to, Graham Cooley. Graham, I think you might be on mute.
Okay, I've been taken off mute now. Thank you. So, thank you very much for inviting me to the discussion. I'm Graham Cooley. I'm the CEO of ITM Power. ITM's an electrolyser manufacturer in Sheffield in the UK. So we were the first hydrogen and fuel cell related company on the London stock market. We spent 20 years developing PEM electrolysis equipment. Last year, we moved into the world's largest operational electrolyser factory with a capacity of 1 gigawatt per annum. Actually, we've now expanded the nameplate capacity to 1.5 gigawatts. Last year, in October, we raised 250 million on the London stock market. So we have cash resources now, 350 million. On our balance sheet. We work very closely with Linde Engineering. Actually, we have a joint venture with Linde called ITM Linde Electrolysis. Linde are our EPC partner. And actually, Linde have 30% of the industrial hydrogen market. So that market is the one that we are concentrating on. That is the 70 million tons per year. That's the existing market for industrial hydrogen, mostly goes into refining and ammonia. So we've been developing electrolysis equipment for the last 20 years. We're focused on modularity, cost reduction, technology performance. We have 755 megawatts of equipment in our backlog. Much of it in the final stages of negotiation, actually waiting for some very important financial decisions by our partners. We partner with Linde, as I said. We also partner with Shell, working with Shell on 100 megawatts at the Rhineland refinery. We are delivering the Leuna project, which is 24 megawatts. Working with Linde on the Yara project, which is a renewable ammonia project, which is another 24 megawatt project. And have in the final stages of negotiation 340 megawatts of industrial scale hydrogen electrolysis. Other partners include Vitol. We have a joint venture with Vitol in the area of supplying hydrogen for heavy vehicle transport. And we've had a long-standing relationship with Sumitomo, a main bank, Japanese bank. And we produce the first compliant, Japanese compliant electrolyzer. And that is going to be deployed with Tokyo Gas, which is the largest energy provider in Japan. So we scaled our technology because it's modular and manufacturable, and are developing now some very significant green hydrogen projects.
Graham, thank you very much. And thank you to all our panelists, Graham, Christian, Vaiter and Anna. Before we take questions, I just thought it would be lovely to hear the four of you maybe exchanging your views, because we have people who've been in the industry for different amounts of time, working within different sectors. And I have to say, Graham, what you were just saying, 20 years in the industry and the size of the contracts and the investment. And I could see Vaiter listening to you very closely. And I just wonder, the pair of you, Vaiter, you're more of more of a disruptor coming along to this. Graham, you've been doing this for a long time. I just think it would be quite interesting to hear the pair of you, what conversation you would have if you happen to be in the same room rather than just online. So Vaitea, to Graham, you know, what do you think of his position and what he's achieved and the way he's gone about this?
Sure. Thanks for this chance. Actually, yeah, I was very excited to share this panel with Graham, because I've heard you on many podcasts, and I feel you've been a leading voice for green hydrogen over the last years, and also in the UK. So yeah, I think, you know, as electrolyzer manufacturers, sure, we have different technologies, but we are all going after the same mission. And I do look up to you, Graham, because I think you've really made things change, and we are only here because of the work that you've also done. So only standing on the shoulders of peers and giants. And so, yeah, I think it's mainly just thank you.
Very, very, very flattering. I'm sure you think that answer, Graham. But I mean, also Christian and Anna smiling there as well. But I mean, you know, let's direct something now to Vaitea, the younger company, the disruptor on the scene. You know, how do you see the market shaping that they are now operating in, Graham?
Yeah. So, yeah. Thanks for the opportunity. Thanks, Vaitea, for your kind words. You know, they're much appreciated. I mean, at ITM, we did quite a lot of development work in anion exchange membranes, as you probably know. You know, there are different electrolyzer technologies. I think there's a place for everything. I'm very conscious that when you look at the industry and you look at the sort of targets that are out there, there are very, very large targets. You know, in the EU alone, where Repower EU is looking for 200 gigawatts of electrolysis by 2030. So massive, and there will be projects for everybody. You know, they at all different levels of the industry, from small-scale electrolysis, looking at packaged units for transport. But our particular interest is working on large EPC projects for the industrial industry. So this is for refining and ammonia and so on. But, you know, you can think about competition when markets become mature. But when markets are at the early stage, I think, you know, we need to think about everybody pushing an industry forward, because it is, I mean, what we're actually in is the fourth industrial revolution. You know, if you think about the first one being about coal, and the second one being about oil, and the third one being about gas, this one is about net zero. And it's an incredible opportunity, actually. I mean, it sometimes feels like a terrible burden, net zero, and the need for renewable electrons and also renewable molecules like hydrogen, because of course you do need both. But it's also an incredible opportunity for manufacturing, development of products, development of technology, and growth. And, you know, and also all the other associated things like energy security. In the introduction, energy storage was mentioned as well. I mean, green hydrogen is a fundamental tool for a new industry. It's a way of storing electrons for very long periods of time. And it's also a way of supplying industry with a commodity that it needs, which is net zero molecules, as well as having net zero electrons. So I look at other technologies and I think to myself, well, you know, and other companies, it isn't about saying why we might be better or different or whatever. There's an astonishingly important industry that we're all growing here.
Yes.
Let's be very positive about that, because it's huge.
Okay, well, let's look at that. You talked about a huge opportunity and huge targets as well. Christian, let me come to you on this one. Huge opportunity, huge targets, huge investment. I mean, how do you see the industry shaping as far as finance goes? Is it finance that is going to be the key to this, or is it demand for the product? What is it going to be?
Well, it will be one of the keys. And luckily, it's all at the same time, which needs to be in place, which is the so-called ecosystem topic, which is not only demand supply, is obviously the availability of investors, of equity, of the corresponding bankability somehow of the projects, and also the whole transport logistics side. I don't see that there is a real issue about, in principle, enough funds to go for this transition, and also looking into the announced measures now by the European Union. If you see the European Hydrogen Bank with a first step of the 3 billion, which surely is not enough, but more to come. If I put this into relation of 200 billion being spent for only by Germany, for example, to support the fossil fuels right now, I think there is a lot of room to also work even stronger on the alternative to make the market. So this is a bit the topic, the market maker concept, to have a secured a way that those who develop the project on the production side have secured, de-risked the projects with a certain tenor of offtake. And at the same time, those right now who are struggling to see on the demand side, on the offtake side, what is the right decision to take, at which price, to which conditions, they cannot be left alone in this struggle, and also not the individual developer can be left alone each individually to solve that. Some big players can do something, but the smaller and the mass will be stuck otherwise. So I think this approach to support with a mechanism somehow, which is now addressed, will help to make also the financial side be ready to put the money. And it is a big opportunity. We know, as we're talking on the electrolyzer side, this scaling, we have right now roughly 1.75 or so gigawatt of capacity in Europe. We will have to go to 17.5 as a target within 3-4 years. We see how we get there, and looking into the total scale, as you mentioned, we need for the 10 million tons, roughly 80 to 100 gigawatts of installed capacity. I think I like what Graham said, that there is a place for everybody. But what I would like to see is that this place, especially for the European players, is not in the end the niche, but also the mass and the scaled market. And this is something we need to be aware of, looking, and I'm happy to, from my previous experience in renewable PV or semiconductors, having gone through quite some experiences here, that we have to be careful that in the end, we are not only on the niche and other parts of the world do than the mass market.
Yes, and that is the global level playing field that has been talked about already. Nodding as you were talking there, Christian, from both Viter and from Graham. Anna, let's get your views on this one. Investment moving forward, global level playing field. What's the biggest challenge that you see in the market for scaling up and for hitting those targets?
Well, actually, when you're talking about scaling something up, that means you already have something. And I'm not sure if we already have something. So I think we need to first really start with the projects that make sense. And there's tremendous potential to take advantage of the fact that electrolyzers are modular. So we don't need to start big. We need to start with the size that makes sense. We can take advantage of that modularity and size the project according to the local needs. And by doing that, avoiding complex logistics that is not in place of transport and distribution and storage. And with that exercise, we will learn so much in terms of, operational knowledge, how to connect electrolyzers to the grid, how to take advantage of the flexibility, how to build the renewables and connect directly or through the grid, how to incorporate the hydrogen in the off-takers, because the challenge don't end, at the output of the electrolyzer. Then we need to integrate the hydrogen into the industrial process, and some of them are easier than others, or in the mobility applications. So the entire value chain learns tremendously independently of the size of the project. So before thinking of, scaling up, we should start thinking of implementing projects that make sense, with off-takers that make sense, with off-takers that have no alternative to decarbonize foreseen today, that have a smaller competitiveness gap compared to the alternatives. And ideally, if they are in places where you have good renewable resources and a good combination of wind and solar, then that's a no-brainer, and you should start by developing projects around those in those conditions. So I really believe that the challenge of scaling up, it's a second level challenge. We first need to learn and implement things with sizes that make sense. And the entire value chain will face the same challenges. It's the scaling up limitations will be not only on electrolyzers manufacturers that are doing their effort and announcing scaling up of their capabilities as well, but also on the renewable side and even on smaller components. Sometimes we forget the smaller components may be the critical piece and the critical path, not really the electrolyzers themselves or the renewables. Sometimes it's the smaller components that are needed to complete the entire project all the way to the end.
This panel is very much focused on tech. So I'm going to throw you a question almost away from the politics and back onto the skills and the available tech and the available skills that you have available to you, because there is in many industries at the moment a skill shortage and recruitment issues. And I just wonder, and it's a question I'm going to put to our second panel as well, whether you are finding that within the electrolyzer industry and there is a challenge to recruit the right people or reskill the people to move the industry forward. I mean, if anyone wants to comment on that, either agree or disagree, just raise your hand and I'll come straight to you. Yeah, go for it, Graham.
So would you mind if I just very briefly responded to Anna and Christian, because they said some very important things. So last year, a lot of electrolyzer manufacturers and the year before raised significant amounts of money on the London stock market and other stock markets. And we got ourselves ready for capacity. We built factories and we're ready to go. The issue is, talking directly to what Christian and Anna said, our customers need a business model. So our customers need to be able to take renewable power and make green hydrogen. And they need a business model for that. Now, where in the world is there a business model to make green hydrogen? Well, very interestingly, the Inflation Reduction Act in the US came out with a very, very simple model. It said, we'll give you $3 a kilogram. Please crack on. Now, what the EU did was much more complex. The EU put in place policies. They did delegated acts. They talked about correlation. They talked about waiving correlation. They talked about all sorts of things. But they haven't put anything tangible in place. The US have put something tangible in place. It means that if you have a spreadsheet that is working out your business model for making green hydrogen, you can put $3 into it. You know what your rate of return is. You can get to a financial investment decision very easily. Okay, so actually the dynamic is now moving away from Europe and towards the US because of the tangible financial nature of the incentives that have been put in place. They're not just policy, and they're going into law. So this is incredibly important. What we need to understand is customers need a business model. They need policy that lasts for a long time, so policy stability, so that they can deploy capital. And I think that's why the Inflation Reduction Act in the US was very important. So that talks directly to what Christian said. The electrolyzer manufacturers, we raised money, we put the capacity in place. Everyone is telling us that it's still inadequate, but we haven't got to financial close on many of the projects because the incentives aren't there, whereas they have done that in the US. I just wanted to make that point.
Okay.
In terms of skills, very easy, to be honest with you. There are so many young people that want to join the energy revolution and don't want to work in conventional industries. And they are coming to us saying, what a marvelous mission you're on. We'd like to join you.
Well, right. So, Vaitea, I guess you would agree with that. Oh, your microphone. If you could turn yourself off mute.
Sure. I hope it's working now. So yeah, no, definitely agree to this. And I know we want to talk about skills and talent, and I agree that there is some skill and talent available there. However, we should also look into how many students, how many minds are working on electrolysis, right? Are working on electrochemistry, and then how many minds are still working on traditional combustion engines for cars, right? So I think from that perspective, we should also keep this in mind.
Okay, let's take a few questions from the floor, and indeed do put your questions into the chat box. This goes back to the politics, the wider question here. This one from Peter. Do you see opportunities for an EU market, significant production, storage and distribution of green hydrogen based on renewables only in Southeast Europe if the latter can agree to an open integrated energy system? Who would like to take that? Do you see the opportunities here for an EU market?
I may jump in shortly, and surely there's more reactions on that. Well, we are focusing and trying, in fact, to make Europe a place where it is also valuable to develop green hydrogen and have a market which is suitable. And it needs optimization at many fronts to be competitive. Obviously, in the end, we have also to care about border mechanisms, that the quality of hydrogen coming in is the same from Europe and elsewhere. If we have these complex rules here in Europe, hopefully not as complex as it seems in the beginning, I think people start to understand we need a clear easy mechanism to have investment decisions. But combining solar with wind is the one thing. Having the wind in the north stepping in. The offshore topic, which on a cost basis is a challenge, but has a lot of opportunity. So there is good opportunities to do a high level of production in Europe, and you have obviously a much better security on supply. You have shorter distances. So there's some very good advantages on the same time, which we need to develop.
Okay, Anna, did you want to come in there? Then Vaitea, I'll come to you. But Anna, I saw you nodding.
No, I was just agreeing with what Christian was saying. I don't think I have anything to add at this point.
Vaitea. Oh, your microphone, Vaitea.
This is going to happen. Huh? Okay, so I'm going to hope that you can hear me. And I just wanted to add that we should not defer action to start producing green hydrogen right here, right now. We should not delay the process to create the mechanisms, set the quotas, implement them, and we should not underestimate the local options, right? Let's not repeat what we've done in the past. 20 years ago, we said, oh no, not enough solar. Okay, obviously, we are producing renewable electricity here in Europe. We are also doing green hydrogen. So I just want to stress, let's go.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we're very, very nearly out of time. But given that this is a tech panel, I just want you to think off the top of your head, maybe a tech invention or something you're dealing with tech-wise at the moment that could really be changed, that would really help your particular part of the industry. So a little teaser maybe for our audience, maybe something you are working on or something you are waiting to see, maybe within one of your collaborating clients or a B2B example. I don't mind what it is, maybe just for a little bit of fun here at the end, the one little bit of tech that you would like to see. So Graham, I can see you smiling. I'll go around the panel, Graham, Christian, Anna, and then I'll end with Vaitea. So Graham. Oh, your microphone, Graham. Maybe it's an unmuting microphone that is what we need.
Can we play the gift for 10 minutes?
Okay, the host keeps putting me on mute. So look, I'd say this. I wouldn't talk about technology developments we're making at ITM Power. They're very commercial and important to us. I would say this: if you want to save the planet, one of the key technologies that we need to develop is nuclear fusion. So if I have my lens and I want to look very long term globally, I would like to see nuclear fusion alongside renewables combined with green hydrogen. And I think that technology development that's going to make an amazing difference. And that's all about the input energy to electrolysis.
All right, Graham, thank you. Christian, a brief word from you.
Yeah, I work also with Graham, and I'm a physicist, and I love the physical process, both on fusion, but also on the nuclear. But I have the trouble that the human beings are not able to handle such power. That's a bit the issue I see. So that's why I really urge humanity to go for more decentralized things which don't give you so much power into one hand. But aside this comment, there are two things I wanted to stress on the technology side. The one is the efficiency. We need the highest possible efficiencies, and this is the combination of the system, and to deal with the various sources of renewable energy, to have the various storage included into the total system control to make the maximum of the renewables we have. And the second is, obviously, we need the maturity with that, the performance guarantees. So really looking onto this reliability long-term, which on the one hand side, we have electrolyzers for a long time, but not all the technologies. And we come to the same situation as before. So we need innovation, but also we need a track record. And we need to get started, as Anna said before. Do we have anything? I'm just returning from World Hydrogen Congress, where we had a panel saying we are a MOU industry so far. And so we need to change that, obviously.
Okay, thank you. Anna, a very brief word from you, the tech for the future.
Well, actually, there's so many room. There's a lot of room for improvements and innovation. Of course, increasing the efficiency, reducing the size, taking the most out of the renewables. Maybe working on the way to directly connect renewables with electrolyzers, take advantage of DC connections. So there are many different opportunities, and also downstream. So how incorporating the hydrogen into the off-takers and industrial process, that's an often neglected part of the value chain, but there's also plenty of room there for innovation and increasing efficiencies.
Anna, thank you. And Fataya, I'll come to you last. I don't know whether you describe yourselves as a tech company or an energy company, but maybe looking ahead, something that maybe you're working on or you need to see in the industry that you think will make the difference.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, only just to address what Anna said, we have a DC version. So yes, 100% agree. This is needed. And also what we are working on now is the megawatt class electrolyzer going live next year. And thinking and working on the multi-megawatts as well. So Enapter scaling, and happy to work with anyone who wants to work on green hydrogen. We are here.
There is a plea at the end there as well for collaboration within the industry, which I think is something that the Graham was saying earlier as well. Anna, Vaitea, Christian and Graham, thank you very much for joining us for our first tech panel of the day. Thank you very much for your thoughts and your views. Ladies and gentlemen, that is our first tech panel concentrating on electrolyzers. We have another one in a little bit for you. That one will be concentrating on carbon capture and storage. We also have our second keynote speech from the Commission as well. Now that's coming up after a very short break. We're going to take a 10-minute break, just enough time to get yourself a cup of tea or coffee, glass of water, and we will see you back here in a little under 10 minutes time from now at 20 past. Thank you very much. Hello and welcome back to Eurogas's Tech Conference 2022. Thank you very much for making us part of your afternoon. Thank you, wherever you are joining us from. Now, we are talking about technology and the EU's role in low carbon tech. So we have another panel for you coming up very shortly, discussing carbon capture and storage, the way forward, the challenges, and the potential opportunities in that area as well. We will be hearing from those who are working within this area of the industry, and it will be your opportunity to ask them questions as well. But before that, I am delighted to introduce our second keynote of the afternoon. Please welcome the Deputy Head of Unit Decarbonisation and Sustainability of Energy Sources at DG ENER, the European Commission. Please welcome Edith Hover.
Thank you very much, Sasha. Can I start?
Please do. The floor is yours.
Yeah. Okay, I wasn't sure about it now. Thank you very much, Sasha, for this introduction. And also thank you very much to Eurogas for inviting the Commission and DG Energy to this European Gas Tech Conference. It's always a pleasure to be here. And I hear that you had already an interesting discussion about electrolyzers earlier today or earlier this afternoon. And I really hope that you found the magical solution to get electrolysis in place and to meet the targets we have set in REPowerEU. Now, as Sasha just said, we turn to another technology which should help us on the way towards the climate neutrality by 2050. I would like to start with a little bit getting back or reminding us where we actually come from on this technology. In 2007, in the Commission, we started working on carbon capture and storage. At that time, it was mainly for the power sector, where we actually wanted to have the technology in place to decarbonize the coal and gas, so electricity production from coal and gas. And therefore, we wanted to apply CCS in this technology, in this production, and the idea was to have the technology commercially viable by 2020. But then the carbon price collapsed, as you all know, and also there was a quite fast deployment of other decarbonization technologies at the time in the power sector. So CCS kind of became obsolete at that time. But now, CCS and also in addition carbon capture and utilization, so CCU, are back in our focus. And in that sense, I also would like to refer to our commissioner who last year at the inaugural forum of the CCUS forum said that now is the time to double down on our efforts to deploy CCUS value chain in Europe. And she continued referring to, on the one hand, the climate neutrality target, but also to the Fit for 55 package. And I would add now the REPowerEU, which we adopted earlier this year. All of these three policy initiatives actually ask for a radical shift in gears in our energy transformation. And we in the Commission believe that CCS and CCU are and need to be part of this transformation, and with many of the tools already in place. And I'll get back to that in a moment. Therefore, we see this carbon capture and storage as an important decarbonization solution, but this time less for the electricity sector, for the power sector, but more as a solution for hard to abate sectors. We're thinking about industries like cement, chemical industry, or steel production. If you look at an extreme case in the cement manufacturing, there is basically no other alternative than CCS, as up to 70% of the sector's carbon footprint are process emissions, and it's difficult to abate them differently. So what are we doing actually on this already in the Commission? We are actually doing quite a lot to support the technology deployment already. Let me mention in particular the Innovation Fund, which, as you know, provides funding, significant funding actually for innovative projects. And in the last 2 years, several projects, in total 11 CCUS projects, were actually selected to be funded under the Innovation Fund. And another proposal or another call for proposal is still coming. And based on this success rate over the last 2 years, we believe another several CCUS projects will be among the laureates, and in particular that this will be a call for a record of 2 billion euros for next year. We also look at the deployment of CO2 infrastructure in the context already of the Trans-European Energy Infrastructure Regulation and the Connecting Europe Facility. The current list of projects of common interest includes already CO2 transport projects. But with the revision of the regulation, in the future, we can also add CO2 storage projects as projects of common interest. So when the application window for the next list of PCIs will open in the coming weeks, we also expect applications from CO2 storage projects. And the member states are also quite busy already taking initiatives in this area. So just some examples. We've seen that 7 member states are actually using the money they got from the Recovery and Resilience Fund to invest in CCUS. We see, for example, in Belgium, that they're building already CO2 infrastructure, or Denmark, which is investing in CO2 storage, or Greece and Croatia, who are putting money in large-scale CCUS projects already. And of course, not to forget the Netherlands, who has been one of the most active member states in this technology and has already invested more than €1 billion in CCS deployment even before the recovery money was made available. So where do we plan to go from here in the Commission? If you look at the market and how many actually of these CO2 infrastructure projects are already announced, we believe that it's time to really step up our efforts to prepare the right conditions for investors to invest in these technologies. At the moment, we are working together with our joint research center to design actually different scenarios for the optimal deployment of an EU-wide CO2 transport and storage infrastructure. If we have this in place and if we have the analysis done, which will make it easier in the future to actually assess these projects and to also see how they can actually contribute to an EU-wide network. And this also not only looks at what we usually in the gas and electricity sector consider as the typical network infrastructure, but also at shipping, as we also believe that this could have an important role for the transport of CO2. Then, of course, when we are talking about infrastructure, we also always have to think about it, whether we have to actually regulate this transport and storage market. What we want to have is that a competitive market develops, but which also allows for third-party access to these transport assets, to these storage sites. Therefore, we have another study going on where we actually look into what could be an appropriate regulatory approach for this CO2 market. Do we need a regulator for CO2? Do we think that the CO2 infrastructure should be more like the gas network or more like the oil network? Do we need a transmission system operator for this? What it could be actually the regulatory framework for such a CO2 transport and storage market. We hope to have the results of this available at the end, early next year. End of this year would be a bit too short. But we will also do, as always, consult with the stakeholders. As I mentioned before, the CCUS forum was launched last year online with our Commission and also Executive Vice President Timmermans. This was an idea which we have put forward in the strategy for the energy system integration, and which we have actually followed up quite with some working groups over this last year, and which will actually culminate in a live event in the next forum, a plenary session of the forum at the end of October in Oslo. So this time it will be a live and in-person event. And we hope to get actually many stakeholders together, as we are looking for an open and inclusive dialogue where we actually discuss the policy initiatives, where we want to discuss the studies which I mentioned, but where we also want to collect material for the way forward for the future of CCUS policy in Europe. We think it's time, or it's soon time, to have some kind of strategic document on what the role of CCS, of the role of CCU in the energy and climate policies towards 2050 could be. And therefore, the CCUS forum in Oslo will be the place to discuss this. Before finishing and before closing, I just would like to thank all of you who have been involved in this work over the last months or even years. And I also invite all of you to come to Oslo for this annual plenary session. The applications are still open, so you can still get your place for the conference in Oslo. Unfortunately, we'll have to leave a bit before the end of this session, but that's why I wish you already good discussions if I cannot stay there until the end. Thank you very much. Back to you, Sasha.
Edith, thank you very much. And I particularly like your invitation. That is very much trying to get all stakeholders involved and get everybody on the same page. it's very clear from what you're saying that there is a lot of research, a lot of policy research, maybe more questions than there are answers at the moment, if I can put it that way. So a lot of things to discuss. And as you say, you will have to leave us before the end. So your plea to people listening to get in touch with their ideas, their examples, come and see you in Oslo, is that it?
Yes, come and see us in Oslo, come and inform us even before Oslo. I mean, we have also dedicated, we have a web page, we have a dedicated email address where the colleagues who are really working on CCS and CCU in more detail are following. Of course, we, especially when we have projects which are ongoing or are planned, we are always very happy to see them and hear about them. And then, yeah, hopefully we have some interesting presentations on those which are already ongoing in Oslo on the 27th and 28th of October.
All right, Edith, thank you very much. Very good to see you and to get your views and actually the updates on what the Commission is doing and a bit of the framework for the way ahead, or at least the possible way ahead. A lot of question marks indeed, as you say. Well, I think this is a really good place now to move on to our second panel of the day. So this is all about tech and this is all about ideas and information sharing. So I would encourage you to put your questions and your thoughts in the chat panel on screen, the question and answer panel on screen. I'll try and get through as many as possible. So let me now introduce our participants. Eurogas has picked those at the forefront of the CCS industry and CCU industry to give us all an idea of where they are at the moment, the challenges, and as I also say, the possibilities ahead. So let's see our panelists. We have for you today Torbjørg Clara Fossum, VP Global CCS Solutions at Equinor. If you just raise your hand for us, Torbjørg, lovely. Thank you very much. Klaus Langmann, Senior Vice President, Carbon Management and Hydrogen at Wintershall Dea. Klaus, good to have you there. Martin O'Neill, VP Strategy at GE Gas Power. Good afternoon, Martin. And Gularen Turan, General Manager, Advocacy and Communications at the Global CCS Institute. Good to have you there, Gularen. So Eurogas has invited all of our panelists to take just a couple of minutes at the beginning of this panel to outline where they are, where their company is in this industry at the moment, and some of the points that they think are important to share with us. So Torbjørg, if we could start with you, please. Thank you.
Thank you. And first of all, thank you for gathering industry and government in the same room. And I truly believe that collaboration, across industry, across government is key to overcome the challenges and also to kind of capitalize on the opportunities ahead of us with the energy transition. So Equinor, we have an ambition of becoming net zero by 2050. And that is a very demanding target. And we also rely on others to achieve this. So therefore, it's a good thing that we are not alone with net zero targets. We are in company with more than 120 nations and also a significant number of industries. And if you think about that, together that is a very strong force from industry, from government with the same target, and we rely on each other. And what I would like to highlight is that the net zero context brings clarity to CCS because there is no way we can get to net zero without this technology. And when I say we, I mean the world, Europe, needs CCS fast and at scale to address the energy intensive part of the energy system. The part of the energy system that cannot be decarbonized based on renewable alone. So in Equinor's energy transition, we are not only investing massively into renewable, but also into solutions based on CCS. And we are targeting these hard to abate segments of the energy system with this technology. And it is a well-proven technology. It has been in operation for more than 40 years in North America. And in Europe, we have unique experience as well. In Norway, we have Sleipner and Snøhvit, and actually more than 26 years of operational experience with storing CO2 offshore. So we know that the technology works, and we know that it can be done in a safe and sustainable way. So it is not the technology that is holding CCS back, but it is the lack of this commercial framework and market. So then the Northern Lights project is an important step with a new business model. And the new business model is simple. It breaks the value chain, the CCS value chain, in two. One part is the industry who capture the CO2, and the other part is the CO2 transport and storage provider, in this case, Northern Lights. And the industry in scope, it's steel and cement and waste to energies and chemicals. And they all have in common that they are difficult to decarbonize. And the realities for these industries is that they have few, if any, alternatives to decarbonize than CCS. And if alternatives exist, they are actually more costly than CCS and cannot deliver in the time frame available. And Northern Lights is part of a full CCS value chain called the Longship. So Longship covers 2 industrial capture sites in Norway and, the Northern Lights part. It's all heavily funded by the Norwegian government. It will start operation in 2024, but there will be additional capacity online from 2026, so in near time. And for this additional capacity, we see an interest from industry in Europe, which is really overwhelming. So we actually see that at the moment, it seems to be more industrial capture projects under development than transport and storage projects. So for us, Northern Lights is just the start, and we need to speed up the development of transport and storage. So it was a very important milestone for us when we were awarded a new storage license in April this year, Smeaheia. We believe Smeaheia has the potential to store 20 million tons of CO2 a year, and this is significant. And with this significant storage opportunity, we are now looking into a CO2 pipeline connection to the continental Europe, so that we can connect large emission points in Europe with the Norwegian continental shelf where there is large storage capacity. And why pipeline? The reason is that this can bring CCS at scale fast, and the cost for transport can be reduced with more than 50% compared to what is being offered today. So this would really contribute to close the current cost gap that today is a major barrier preventing CCS deployment at scale. But then, building such large infrastructure is not for one player alone. We are very excited about the first steps that we are now taking together with Wintershall for the development of the German pipeline system, and with Fluxus for the development of the pipeline system to Belgium. So to me, it's clear that CCS is getting traction, and the industry is ready to ramp up investment. But there is need for more clarity from government and clear EU policy on the role and the deployment of CCS to enable the necessary investment. So listening to Edith Hoffer here in the introduction was really, good. It gives me kind of the perception that this is also realized by the EU, because we don't have a lot of time and we need to act now. So with that introduction, I'm very much looking forward to the further discussions today.
Torbjørg, thank you very much. Very interesting. We'll talk, no doubt, more about the potential pipeline, the storage, and when they could actually be operational. Let's move now to Klaus, if you would like to give us an idea of where you are in the industry and what you see as the way forward.
Yes, hello. Thank you very much. And also great to be here, and thanks to be invited. I think it's very, very important that we have these kind of meetings for close cooperation between companies, countries, and authorities all about Europe. I mean, the topic that we see, despite quite a bit of turmoil in the world at the moment, this issue of climate change is just one of the greatest challenges of mankind. It's not pausing. And we, from Wintershall Dea side, as a gas and oil company, we have a lot to contribute there in order to mitigate the climate change, especially kind of when it comes to CCS, carbon capture and storage. So I'm talking here about depleted fields that we can offer. I'm talking about the subsurface knowledge, but also kind of a significant know-how in pipeline constructions and operations, but also kind of throughout Europe, significant presence in the relevant geographies in order to make a CCS value chain happening. And we're talking mainly about kind of linking significant carbon dioxide emissions in mainland Europe. Germany is, of course, kind of one of the greatest emitters, but also the Benelux countries with the relevant storage sites that are developing throughout the North Sea. And that Denmark is important in this respect. Norway is kind of a key country from our side in order to make sure we can safely store away these CO2 emissions over time. Wintershall Dea is on its way to develop from what we call a gas and oil company into a leading European gas and carbon management company. That means really mean it to kind of contribute our know-how, our assets to the significant challenge of curbing the carbon dioxide emissions throughout Europe. Our ambitions that we have formulated is to abate 20 to 30 million tons of carbon dioxide per year by 2040. And I believe that is, for a company our size, a very significant contribution. The question is kind of how we would do that. And as I described, for us, it's very important to construct a value chain from the emitter via transporting the carbon dioxide to save storage for eternity. And it's quite complex to bring such a value chain together because the moment it's not really existing. We do have the technology available, but we have to make sure that along the value chain, all kind of participants do invest at the same time, and kind of we have to make sure that transparently everybody has a view that this value chain could be established. So for us, important is how do we get the carbon dioxide out of Germany? We propose with a project that we call the CO2 Connect Now in the Wilhelmshaven area at the northern coast of Germany, a carbon dioxide collection hub, to which we would kind of channel significant sources of carbon dioxide from industrial sources, from the so-called hard-to-abate industrial sites. And then we plan to ship these carbon dioxide volumes to storage sites in Norway. Toby, you mentioned that kind of a very significant contribution also will come from the cooperation with Equinor. Equinor is one of our main partners here. And as described, cooperation along this value chain is very, very important. So we believe quite quickly when we have this value proposition out that we would be able to channel significant volumes of carbon dioxide via Wilhelmshaven, and then a pipeline connection from the northern shore of Germany into kind of Norwegian side makes a lot of sense because it would significantly reduce the cost for establishing a carbon dioxide value chain. Because what we have learned, especially the last year or so, that the future supply of sustainable and affordable energy is very, very important. And thereby CCS would play a very important game because it's, for many industries, the by far most efficient and cheapest way to decarbonize really our activities. What do we need from a regulatory side? I mean, kind of some of the important topics, the most important topics are, of course, a non-discriminatory and open access CO2 transport system. That is for us very important to make sure that we can access and channel these CO2 volumes kind of from the mainland Europe into kind of the sinks. Very important is also the legal basis for CO2 export between countries throughout Europe. That's kind of not a given. And it would help kind of a lot if not only few countries throughout Europe, but many or all member states of the European Union would ratify Article 6 of the London Protocol, and maybe a little bit also kind of looking at the more distant future, because kind of CCS can not only play a role in decarbonizing kind of the existing emissions, we also have to generate new negative emissions for the future by pulling carbon dioxide out from the air. And we propose also that a negative emissions scheme kind of should be promoted by the European certification system in order to also kind of deal about CO2 emissions that are not so easy to capture for the future. So quite some interesting developments and quite some challenges ahead of us, but I believe in a cooperation with partners, with authorities, we are in a position to deliver very good value propositions for the future, to come up and help to come closer to Europe's target to decarbonize latest by 2050. Thank you very much. I'm very much looking forward to a discussion and further questions. Thank you.
Klaus, thank you very much. Mentioning their regulation, and again, more questions possibly than there are answers at the moment, and trying to work out the framework within which this part of the industry can operate. I've already written down collaboration. We will talk about that when I've heard from all the panelists. So now let us turn to Martin O'Neill. Martin, give us your view of where you are in the industry at the moment.
Sasha, thanks. So, I mean, General Electric currently provides about equipment that generates more than 1/3 of the world's electricity. So the pressure, the burden, and the will to be a leader in the energy transition really has forced us to examine how our technologies play together horizontally. And increasingly, we're seeing more sophisticated customer asks in the power generation segment to provide solutions for decarbonisation in concert, rather than perhaps just site, permit and build one particular generation technology. Large customers with very, very complex problems. As we have really examined how we need to go to market for our customers, we are creating our GE Vernova power portfolio of companies to be able to help them answer that question. And basically, I think in the very near future, consultations with customers are going to all be about how we can make different technologies play together: gas turbine power generation, nuclear, wind turbines, and then the grid itself, to be able to hit some of these decarbonisation targets. GE and gas power specifically is extremely excited about carbon capture as a technology pathway to net zero 2050. We think that 15% and more of CO2 emissions are going to continue to be hard to abate, and a good proportion of that will still come from the electricity power generation segment. And the reason's simple. The renewables build out that we need is not moving as fast as we would like. The siting and permitting of new grid infrastructure to be able to receive the type of electrons that variable renewable energy, photovoltaic, or wind, or even battery sources, those are electrons that are coupled to existing grids through inverter-based technologies, whereas I would say more conventional power sources such as hydro, nuclear, even coal and gas power, we provide the ability to provide synchronous rotating inertia to grids that provides frequency stability. And we're convinced, because of the lack of acceleration of the renewables build out, that we're going to really need to protect for a future where gas turbines become a vital balancing technology on grids of the future, because not all electrons are created equally. And the electrons that come from those gas turbine power plants will help to stabilize and balance the grid. And counterintuitively, for some, it is the most carbon efficient electricity generation technology. It actually accelerates the growth at which you can add renewables to already complex and congested grids. So ultimately, we need to start thinking about the area under the curve. It's no good, in my opinion, personally, to be dreaming about green hydrogen futures in 2040 when we can do significant good in this decade and next to decarbonize power generation and to scale seriously solvent-based carbon capture, sorbent-based carbon capture in the future, to be more efficient, to be more affordable, and to really get after that area under the curve problem, because there's going to be a decade or more until we've got abundant, affordable green hydrogen for power generation. And quite frankly, just not enough discussion around that point. We need to accelerate the blue path. The technology is there. Yes, it needs to be demonstrated. It needs to be improved. And industrial global supply chains need to support that. And GE intends to position itself at the forefront of those discussions. We need to do it for our customers, and we want to do it for the world. And basically, I think that's where we need to drive an acceleration in narrative around market design, around economic stimulus. And we need a little bit of realism about the speed at which global supply chains are growing for renewables, and the speed of investment in grid infrastructure, some of the net zero trajectories that we've been reviewing from the IEA as recently as this spring, quite frankly, don't hold water. So carbon capture is a necessity. We stand by that statement and we are all in. Thank you very much.
Martin, thank you very much. Very strong statement from you saying that you need to, in your opinion, accelerate the blue path and basically get on and do it now. And then looking at sort of, I think the word you wrote down here was realism needs to be injected in. I'm going to get the views from our other participants on that, see if they agree in a moment. But Gularan, I'm very aware we've not heard from you yet. So from the CCS Institute, I imagine you'd like to give us a bit of an oversight on some of the ways that you see the industry moving forward.
Thank you, Sasha. And again, thanks very much to Eurogas for including me here. It's really exciting to hear from the three other participants who all come from companies who are at the forefront of decarbonisation and looking kind of to employ or deploying CCS, obviously Equinor, Wintershall, and GE. So what I thought I'd do is just take a step back and perhaps for the audience, just give a little bit of a higher level overview of where CCS and CC, or rather actually CCUS, stand in Europe. I think it's a really, really exciting time for CCS in Europe. But before we get to that, for those of you that do not know the Global CCS Institute, we are an international climate think tank that aims to accelerate the deployment of carbon capture and storage as one of the key technologies to mitigate climate change. We are backed by a strong membership of 160 plus organizations, companies, and happy to report that both Equinor and GE are our members. And Klaus, we're certainly hoping to have Wintershall join us as well. When I said it's a very exciting time for CCS, there has been a lot of development momentum year on year, in fact, from 2019 onwards. And a slight unabashed plug. Every year we release our global status of CCS report, which is our flagship publication. It details what has happened around the world in terms of CCS, and we are going to release our 2022 report on Monday with an online event. And I encourage the participants to, if they're interested more in CCS, to dial in and to download the report. It's free. It's going to be our website. I promised my team that I wasn't going to steal the thunder and say what's happening in Europe, but I think it's just fair to give the headline that in 2021 we had something around 30 plus projects, facilities under development in Europe. Of course, as Torbjörg mentioned, Sleipner and Snøhvit have been operating for quite a number of years now, but we had some 30 plus facilities, and a year later, we've almost doubled that number. We'll have more than 70 facilities in the pipeline of projects that are in various stages of development. So I think that's huge momentum. And of course, we have the Longship project that Torbjörg talked about being under construction in Norway with the Northern Lights, the storage part, and also the two capture facilities in Norway. The waste to energy and cement. So I think it's hugely exciting. What else is exciting is I believe that we are seeing first commercial facilities entering into development in a number of new countries in Europe. Obviously, Norway, Netherlands, and the UK. And I know we're no longer in the EU. I'm based in the UK. We're no longer in the EU, but I still consider UK to be part of the continent Europe. So I'll also touch upon what's happening in the UK in my comments. So these countries traditionally were leading on the CCS space, always had lots of interest in CCS, but we're now having countries like Bulgaria, Belgium, Denmark, Germany, Finland, Italy, Poland, Sweden, kind of progressing CCS projects, facilities, which I think is super exciting. And that very much, I think, is in line with what we heard from the previous speakers, i.e. that CCS is a must, not an option. It's a must if we were to meet our climate targets and kind of given the 2050 commitment from the European Union, as well as a number of other countries, etc., in the UK as well. We definitely need to employ CCS, and I think that's underlining the momentum. Of course, we heard from Edith, the European Union, EU, through the Commission, and through its Innovation Fund has already selected 11 CCS facilities in the first 2 calls of the Innovation Fund, which is a big funding facility for innovative decarbonisation technologies. And I think that's, again, really significant. So CCS facilities actually are a big part of the overall funding pool, because of course CCS delivers significant abatement, CO2 abatement at scale. And that's really exciting to see. But in addition to at the EU level, we're also seeing countries progress with CCS. I'm always very excited about the Danish government, because in their own words from their minister, they went from sort of 0 to 60, 70 miles an hour within the context of 2 years. The government is now allocating around 5 billion euros to CCS deployment within Denmark. And given Denmark as a country that's, again, leading on the decarbonisation space and renewables and efficiency, this understanding that, we can't do without CCS, and realizing that and putting that into action, I think it's just marvelous to see. Again, in Denmark, in Netherlands, we're seeing kind of the Dutch government's commitment to CCS. The Porthos project hopefully will follow very shortly in Longship project's steps and go into FID. Where I am based in the UK, lots of excitement over CCS. The government is taking a little bit of a perhaps different approach to the European Union, whereby it's much more kind of, I suppose, centrally planned. There has been a competition. 2 what's called clusters have been picked to become operational by 2025. The government will pick another 2 clusters, so targeted capturing and storing around 30 million tons of CO2 per year. Lots of capture facilities that are under development rather, in the UK at the moment. So I guess I want to underline all of that and say there's a lot of momentum all across Europe. And it's not just for CCS, but I also like to point out also for carbon dioxide removal. So CCS is a technology that helps also through to remove historic CO2 from the atmosphere, through direct air capture, through bioenergy with CCS. And again, we're seeing some developments both in EU and UK at that front. So really exciting times in a nutshell. When I look we heard from Edith about the CCUS forum in Oslo. I'll be there, and if anybody else will, please come and say hello. I think it's going to be super exciting. And there's already quite a lot of work that's going into it to define the vision for CCUS in Europe, to define the infrastructure needs, to bring together sort of partnerships. So there are 3 working groups under that, the CCUS forum we'll hear about the different working groups. So that's all wonderful. What I would love to see is, despite all this momentum, and it's fantastic, don't get me wrong, Terburg, but it's just Longship that's under construction in Europe. With all these projects entering into development phase, I would love to see more operational facilities kind of start, because of course, as we all know, nothing succeeds like success. We just need to see more of these facilities kind of really starting to abate CO2. And I think until that, we can't really call our job done. Thank you.
Gulran, thank you very much, and thank you to all my panelists. And Gulran, that's exactly where I'm going to start with the discussion, because this is a topic that has been talked about a lot for a very long time. And I think you just summed it up very nicely there. Let's stop talking about them being in sort of either the planning stages, and let's move on to the next stage. And as you said, quoting your words, until you can do that, it's not job done. So my question to all 4 panelists, raise your hand if you would like to be the first one to attack this. What is it going to take to boost this, as far as you're concerned? What's it? Martin, straight away there. Okay. So, what is it going to take the industry to move on from the development stage to actually seeing a lot of these in action? Martin.
So just to get started, we need to really start to regulate voluntary carbon markets, and we need to enable trading of offsets between regulated ETS markets in Europe and the UK and voluntary markets. And we need to really build a belief system around carbon price that it can hold up, because that's going to be the motor of investment, and it's going to be the stick, not the carrot, to get some of the investors to move. At the same time, we need the carrot too. I would say the Inflation Reduction Act in the US is incentivizing for gas turbine plants, for example, $85 per ton of removed CO2 by carbon capture or other means. And basically that is allowing people to pencil something onto a balance sheet and build a business case and talk to their investors and talk to insurance underwriters. You know, ultimately, I think it was Torbjörg that was speaking at the beginning, or actually it was in the keynote. We talked about in 2007, the carbon price collapsed and we kind of took a holiday from carbon capture. Can we all agree that creating the economic environment for carbon capture technology to flourish is an absolute essential, and that until that occurs, yes, we're going to participate in very emotive, high-profile programs like Net Zero Teesside, one of those UK carbon clusters that we're really excited about, but you don't get an industry to scale with unique unicorn projects. And we really want to partner with Northern Lights. We really want to see the infrastructure for removal building at the same speed. It needs market design, it needs incentive.
Okay. Torbjörg, I can see you nodding there. Do you want to come in on that one? Needs market design and needs incentive. Do you agree? Is that the main stumbling block to the speed of the scale?
Yeah, I think it is, and I very much agree with Martin. And I think if you look at the circumstances today, it costs more to implement CCS than it costs to just pay the taxes and emit the CO2. So currently there is, this gap, and this gap needs to be closed. And I think to close that, we must focus on realizing projects. So the first project, the initial projects, they need special support in a way. You can get it from the innovation fund that was mentioned and other areas, but we need to make these projects happen because they are the ones that are paving the way. They are bringing scale, and we all know from all other technologies that with scale, with industrialization, cost is coming down, and we also expect the cost of emitting to increase in the same period. So we are now in the very difficult phase where we need to make sure that projects are kind of not stopping up but progressed, and that needs to be. It needs support from the governments and the EU to make that happen.
Okay. Klaus, you're looking thoughtful, I think. I don't know whether you agree with your fellow panelists or you want to throw something else in there.
It's no, I agree, because I really see also kind of realizing a first value chain brings a lot of trust into the market. And it's not only for the participants at the value chain, because many companies are eyeing at this kind of technology, I would say cautiously for the time being, because they are very keen or very, very curious if kind of we could make that happen. That's one. But also I see still quite some reluctance from the population eyeing at this technology. Is it safe? Is it reliable? Can we do it as cheap as we all propose? So I fully agree that kind of getting quickly first projects into the funnel and into execution mode makes sure and will make sure that kind of the entire industry gains trust with society, with governments, and that will spur the business. So that's of utmost importance. So I cannot agree more.
Okay, Martin, can I come back to you on that one? Because something you said within your presentation, and I jotted it down here. I think you said you're getting harder asks from your customers on what they need. And I wonder if that actually echoes what Klaus is saying, that customers are pushing you more or need more from you or more certainty. I'm not sure.
Customers need optionality fundamentally, right? I think if you are a power generator today, you obviously want to accelerate your renewables portfolio as fast as you can. You want to look at different ways of storing energy and how you feed that all into the grid. Many of our customers have got carbon emitting assets in their portfolios, and they understand, because they're in the industry with GE and our competitors, they understand the different features and functions that those generation technologies have when they work together to make grids function. And therefore, they know that decarbonising synchronous assets is a real problem that has to be solved. And sometimes in some discussions in Brussels, in London, in Berlin, I'll get into rather happy worldviews that renewables and batteries, problem solved, and that's it, done. I think coupling hard-to-abate segments such as cement, steel, aluminium with the same challenges that we've got with gas turbine power generation, and thinking also about how to massively, exponentially increase blue hydrogen availability, all points to the fact that you need carbon capture and you need it now. And our customers are looking to us and saying, what do you have? When have you got it? How is it economically viable in the market conditions that I am living within? And right now, if you've got 4 power plants, and one of them decided, for whatever reasons, to put a carbon capture system on the back of their power plant, that would give them a performance penalty. It would give them a significant economic penalty, and they would have to work through the CapEx investment on their balance sheet. They're not going to get dispatched ahead of the other 3 power plants today. So you have to shift the logic of the market design in electricity markets. The dispatchable power agreement in the UK is a good place to look. And I'm not saying that because I'm a Brit. I actually live in Spain, and I've lived outside of the UK for more than 20 years. But some of the things that are happening with those carbon clusters in the UK are setting the way on the problems that need to be solved. Incentivize, how does the balance sheet CapEx get offset? What's the incentive to repair the performance offset for running a chemical plant on the back of your thermal plant? How does that get compensated for? Until market design addresses that, and again, I repeat, the Inflation Reduction Act in the United States is trying to get after that, right, with this direct tax payment. We need an equivalent, and we need it now. And at the same time, there are a few governments and member states in the EU27 that are continuing to live in denial that carbon capture is part of the solution path. I think education of society in net zero scenarios and trajectories should also be a point on the list.
Okay, does anyone else want to pick up on that? The education of society, which does rather sort of play into a couple of questions about, where CCS would fit in long term with energy transition and how it would be either accepted or not as a general point going forward. Does anyone else want to pick up on the education point of view? Maybe a lack of awareness either from the industry or not, or maybe you're all quite happy with that. Yeah, go for it.
No, just a few reflections. I mean, it's a very important point, and what we experience is that the competence on CCS is varying a lot. Some stakeholders has hardly heard about it, so it is important to kind of bring facts and use the experience we have that the technology is existing. It has been existing for 40 years in North America. So I think it is important, and we must not underestimate that. And particularly when it comes to Germany, we all know, I think, the history about CCS in Germany, which is now kind of turning a little bit, or maybe even taking a U-turn, because the basis for the discussions is different now, because it is to decarbonize industry, and everybody understands that we need these industries in a low carbon society. But bringing the facts, using the knowledge that we have, it's extremely important.
We are. Oh, sorry, Klaus. Do you want to go ahead?
I thought kind of Martin, you wanted to.
Martin.
But I can make a comment as well. But Martin, you wanted to be first.
I'll be very quick. I just think that, the conflict in, the illegal war in Ukraine is obviously forcing member states to think about energy security. And unfortunately, that's making coal-fired power more fashionable again. Now, we need to have, if you want to have diversity and energy security in your generation assets, coal and gas with renewables, and in the future, hydrogen or low carbon intensity fuels, we need carbon capture now. So whatever perhaps, the societal acceptance in Germany specifically has been to carbon capture 10 years ago, it needs a re-examination, and that starts with education. And I would love to see 3 centimeters of column narrative about carbon capture every time I read 3 centimeters about green hydrogen. That would be a balanced, realistic discussion. And we're not anywhere close to that today.
Klaus, do you want to come in on that one?
Yes, I mean, kind of of course, as a German, I can say that. I mean, the Germans are in terms of regulation towards CCS, of course, just behind the moon, I have to say. But we have done a lot of effort together with others in order to educate politics, educate also society, and we see movements now. And that is, of course, spurred with the fact that just by sudden the energy supply has become a very, very important discussion topic, especially on the price of energy supply. So it becomes more and more clear that the electricity or the power is not just coming from the plug. So kind of people start thinking about how it gets there and kind of how can we kind of in future focus on a more reliable, kind of on more decarbonized energy scheme. And that is, of course, related also to CCS, because as I said earlier, one of the cheapest decarbonization schemes, and that will become into play. But yes, we need to kind of work on that, because the public perception for me is important in order to convince all the politics, and then regulation will be shaped, and the industry will kick in.
Well, it is the voters at the end of the day, isn't it? If you're going to talk about in influencing, or indeed where the politics would go, it is what the voters, what the public think, and what their priorities are as well. Ladies and gentlemen, we are out of time, so it just leaves me to thank all my panelists for a very interesting discussion. Torbjørn, Klaus, Martin and Gulliran, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon to talk about your part within the CCS and CCU industry. Thank you to the 4 of you. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
And that brings us to a close of our second panel today in our tech conference. Very pleased to say now I can hand over to the Secretary General of Eurogas, James Watson, for his thoughts on what he has heard, and indeed the thoughts of Eurogas on the way forward. James.
Thank you, Sasha. It's been an excellent conference and a really great moderation again this time. Sasha, it's great to work with you. Thanks for putting the good questions to the panelists and also giving them the chance to express themselves. We've certainly heard some very strong expressions of the way that people see that things should be done. Indeed, thanks to everybody really for watching. I think that what we've seen today is that indeed we are going to need both of these technologies. We've focused on electrolyzers and carbon capture and storage. If we have any chance to reach the objectives of our climate change and indeed our 1.5 degrees global warming target. These are challenges, but they are challenges that we clearly have the technology to overcome. And I think it is very clear that we are indeed in a situation where we need to build up both of these technologies. I think both panels have been very positive and enthusiastic. I think that there's been a great deal of support from industry to show how they can develop these technologies and to do it quickly. Let's be honest, we will need to do it quickly. In Eurogas, we've been watching the Repower EU documents and the communications that go around it, of course, in response to the war in Ukraine. And we do see that there is a very strong preference and, in a way, a strong drive towards the side of producing renewable hydrogen. However, we are slightly concerned that there is no mention really of carbon capture and storage. This is clearly an oversight, I think, in the European Commission. It was good to have both DG RTD and DG ENA on today from the Commission explaining their points of view, and particularly in DG ENA talking about the CCS forum that's coming up in Norway. And so we do believe that there is time indeed to change that focus to make sure that CCS is also given its right and its rightful place. IPCC, of course, have talked about having carbon capture and storage as necessary if we're going to meet the objectives of 1.5 in the time frame we have. And that's, I think, just breaking the two panels. The first panel, I think it was very good that we heard about, the fundamental nature, the fundamental tool of having green hydrogen, renewable hydrogen, and that the electrolyzer industry indeed is a huge industrial opportunity for Europe. We mustn't let that get away from us. We do need to make sure that those leaders that we've seen today on TV, on our screens, are indeed given the support that they need. And indeed, the unrivaled possibilities that you have in terms of storage capabilities for renewable energy in green hydrogen is something that really we shouldn't toss away so lightly. I think it's also very important from a Eurogas point of view that we get things like additionality right. There's no way that the Americans or the Chinese are going to try and wrap up their nascent industries in huge amounts of red tape. It's not their nature. They're much more commercial by nature. And I think that we have to make sure when we look at things like additionality, we don't, again, give our industry starting 2 steps behind the others. So additionality will need to be proportionate. We need to make sure that it applies at the right moment and that we have the right kind of temporal and geographical correlations. I was struck by one particular point, though, that was mentioned, and I think indeed that this was said by Graham Cooley, CEO of ITM. This should not be a niche industry. And no, indeed, this should be a European champion industry. And I do think that that is something that we should really take away. It's not just about the energy transition for electrolyzers, it's also about the possibility that they offer for industrial leadership. And Europe should be grabbing those opportunities with both hands. On the second panel, which we've just had, so in a way it's summarizing what you've just been listening to. So I'll be a bit briefer perhaps, but I can say that it is absolutely apparent when you listen to all, carbon capture is a necessity. There's no escape from this. Carbon capture is a necessity. We must, if we are to keep that pathway going, start deploying in a much bigger and more coordinated way than we are at the moment, carbon capture technologies. Indeed, I think that it was very, very important to hear as well what Martin was saying about the need to have things like solvent-based CCS, that we need markets with carbon that work, that can link also globally. And that we need to have design a market that's also tradable, and that we need the right regulation. And here I would step in also from Eurogas' point of view and say, we believe very strongly in targets. Targets drive incentives and they drive industry to behave correctly. And if we had a target of 20% CO2 emissions reduction from the gas sector, which Eurogas strongly believes in, between 2020 and 2030, this will provide that kind of regulatory incentivization, if you will, to deliver carbon capture and carbon capture storage at scale, because this is the best way to reduce gas and gaseous fuels CO2 content in a very short period of time. I think the other thing that I found was interesting was we talked about carbon clusters, and this is also a good way of incentivizing the way that we can actually deploy CCS, at least in a short-term basis, I would imagine. And so in principle, I said, again, this panel gave a lot of positive information. I think Lauren was covering a huge amount of projects that currently exist also in Europe. And we include UK in Europe. Lauren, in Eurogas, we also represent UK companies. So for us, the UK remains part of Europe indeed. The reality is very, very simple, that these are projects that exist today and we need to increase and do more and scale them up. And in so many ways, it is almost odd that we haven't seen that same kind of focus on CCS as we've seen on the development of renewable hydrogen, because these are two technologies that are going to be going hand in hand to deliver our objectives. I'll finish that summary there. I think I could go on much longer, but I think everybody wants to go and probably have a cup of tea. What I think is important that we take away is that we've seen industry coming and saying, we want very much to do these things. These are opportunities. These are opportunities for Europe. Europe can lead here. I believe very strongly in Europe leading the energy transition, and even at a global level, Europe has to do that. And I think that we therefore have to make sure that the policymakers share the ambition, the positivity and enthusiasm of our industrial players and deliver upon the opportunities that both technologies offer. Sasha, of course, I want to thank you very much for the great moderation today, and thank you also for stepping in for the opening parts this afternoon. It was really great that you did that. And indeed, also to the panelists, she also thanks. It's really great to have such a wide variety of views, and indeed to hear the experts speak about these two technologies and the opportunities they present. I also thank the European Commission. They're not here anymore, but to thank them anyway for coming and speaking and giving their views about what they will do and how they will listen to what we have to say in terms of delivering upon these two great opportunities. And finally, but by no least, the audience, thanks for staying with us. Thanks for enjoying this with us. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I have. I really found it insightful. And the final thank you goes to the team, without whom we could not do any of this. Thank you very much to the Eurogas team. I wish you all a very pleasant rest of the afternoon, and I look forward to joining you all again next year. We'll have another edition of Gas Tech, and indeed we'll see what technologies we'll be looking at then. Wishing you well. Thanks very much for joining us. We'll see you in the next conference.